Radio. Hello, and welcome to the OI Foundation podcast series. I'm Tracy Hart, CEO of the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation. One of the primary activities of the foundation is to provide timely, accurate, and medically verified information to medical professionals and constituents alike. Each OIF podcast episode features an expert speaker discussing various topics related to osteogenesis imperfecta. The OIF podcast series is a part of the ongoing educational efforts of the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium, part of the National Institutes of Health's Rare Diseases Clinical Research Network. The professional education activities of the BBDC are led by the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation. Our podcast today will feature Dr. Brendan Lee to discuss the latest on the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium and Contact Registry. Dr. Lee is a professor and chairman of the Department of Molecular and Human Genetics at Baylor College of Medicine. He is a member of the OIF's Medical Advisory Council and the principal investigator of the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium. Welcome, Dr. Lee, and thank you so much for being here again with us.
Thank you, Tracy. It's my pleasure to join you on this podcast and to come and talk to you about all the exciting things going on in the Brittle Bones Disorder Consortium.
Excellent. Well, it was a little over a year ago that you were our first expert speaker on our podcast series, and we kicked off talking about the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium. And now we're into year three, very early in year three of the consortium. So can you just give us an overview of where we are and what progress has been made since we started?
Absolutely. It has been an absolutely exciting year for all of us in the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium. If you remember a year ago, we were in the midst of really launching all the activities. Just to give our audience sort of context, when we were funded in the Brittle Bones Disorders Consortium to really galvanize research activities in brittle bones diseases, we spent the first year, I would say, really organizing, preparing all of our sites, and planning all of the different studies in collaboration with the OI Foundation, as well as with the National Institutes of Health. And when we talked about a year ago or so, we were in the midst of launching many of the studies and many of our sites. So we've come a long way since then. So one of the major goals of the BBDC was to do a natural history or longitudinal study. That is, to follow many of our patients and families with OI and to really get a deep understanding of what is the course of the disease in our current day of treatment and interventions. So since that time, a year plus ago, we've now launched all of our sites in terms of the natural history study. So this includes our lead site here at Baylor College of Medicine, a site at the Chicago Shriners Hospital for Children, a site at the Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C., a site at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York, a site at the Kennedy Krieger Institute in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, a site at the Montreal Shriners Hospital for Children, a site at the Oregon Health Sciences University in Portland, Oregon, a site at the University of California in Los Angeles, and a brand new site, which was not originally part of our application that we've now added, at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha. So really broad coverage across much of the United States as well as parts of Canada. And the goal of this central study, the longitudinal study of osteogenesis imperfecta, was in fact to enroll over a period of the 5 years of the grant 1,000 individuals with OI. I'm delighted to report not only that all the sites are now active in recruiting, we've now made even more progress towards that goal than was expected at this time point in the grant. And so our target enrollment at the beginning of this third-year period of the grant was about 265 individuals. Again, this is because of the fact that the grant and the study started primarily in year two, with the first year being planning. Well, as of mid-November, we have over 500 individuals already enrolled in this very critical core study. And this is because of the efforts of all the families out there as well as of the OI Foundation. And so we're more than halfway through with sort of our targeted enrollment. And as many of the families know, this is that core study which will answer key questions about what happens with the skeleton, the spine, oral health, and many aspects of OI. So we're very delighted with regards to this core study. And we still have a lot to do, obviously, and another 500 to go, but at the rate we're recruiting and with everyone's help, we hope to get there certainly before the end of this first 5-year period of the grant, but certainly we think we're making great progress. Now, another key component of the study is a second project, which was focused on testing really an exciting discovery of the BBDC. And that is a new approach to treating osteogenesis imperfecta based on a deep understanding of the underlying disease mechanism or causation. So this is the idea that we've identified all the genes that cause OI, or many of the genes that cause OI, but why do they cause OI? And as some of you may know from attending the national conference or other venues of communication with the OIF, we've discovered that increased signaling or increased abundance of a chemical called TGF-beta may be an underlying common cause of many forms of OI that arise from different genetic defects related to collagen. And so another primary study in the BBDC was to perform a phase 1 clinical trial looking at whether a new drug called fresolimumab that blocks TGF-beta may be important or useful in a targeted fashion in OI. And so I'm delighted to report that, in fact, we have designed the study. We have worked with partners in industry, specifically Genzyme Pharmaceuticals and Sanofi, who's providing the drug, to move forward with this clinical trial. And news that we just got recently, we submitted what is called an IND, which is something that is required by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, before we can do these trials, was approved, and there was no concerns. And so basically we have a green light from the FDA to move forward. So we are very excited that over the next 12 months, we will now add this very important study to the BBDC, where we will be recruiting adults with severe forms of osteogenesis imperfecta, and where we would then be testing first the safety of this medication, but also secondarily the efficacy in this clinical trial. So really the really exciting, because at some level this is the first sort of targeted therapeutic for osteogenesis imperfecta. And we hope that because it is targeted based on the mechanism of the disease, that it will be even more effective than some of the currently existing approaches to therapy. So that's the second big sort of announcement or achievement that we have had. Now, having said that, as you may remember, there are other protocols and other smaller studies that occur within the BBDC, and they are focused on craniofacial, how the head and the skull and the oral cavity develops. This study has also been launched. There are 2 studies which focus on pregnancy and pregnancy natural history in OI. That's about to be launched, as well as a study that has also been launched, which is focused on developing tools on the quality of life measures in OI, especially adults with OI. So multiple additional pilot studies that were planned, they've all been launched. So really, from the perspective of broadly what we proposed to the FDA, we have already achieved the launch of many of the primary core studies as well as the pilot studies. So again, I would say when you compare us to many of the other networks, given that we are a young network in our first cycle of funding, we've really achieved a lot together with you.
It makes me very proud, to be here at the OI Foundation and to hear this really exciting news. But it also just really emphasizes the importance of that partnership with the community, because, having the longitudinal study, having people as part of the contact registry, it's just a partnership with research and advocacy. And it's a really proud moment for us as well. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. I think that, in our very conception or planning of this consortium, it was, as you know better than I, driven by the OIF and the families. We could not do what we're doing without this partnership, and it truly is a partnership of families with OI, the OI Foundation, and the investigators in the community.
So as not to sort of relax now, there's still a lot to do with the other parts of the consortium, especially the contact registry. And that's something that, we really publicize a lot here at the OIF through social media and various other methods of communication. But for people to participate in the contact registry is really important. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, many of the studies that I've talked about just a few minutes ago are implemented by the sites that are part of the consortium. And so I listed them out, and they represent a broad swath of the geography in the U.S. and Canada. However, we recognize, and we all together know, that there are OI families throughout the U.S., Canada, and the world. So how can we better connect with those families and also engage them in this research endeavor? And so the contact registry is, in fact, exactly that vehicle. It is a virtual engagement, meaning that to participate in the contact registry, you don't have to come to necessarily one of the sites. Obviously, you're welcome to, and we would love to see you, but we recognize that there are a lot of families that can't necessarily easily travel to a primary site. Certainly individuals who are not in the U.S., there are challenges with travel. So the contact registry allows all OI families throughout the world to enroll and participate in the research. And so how do they do that? Well, first, it's all virtual. It's on the web, and you can go to the website for the contact registry via the OIF website, the OI Foundation website, or the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium website, either one. You just need to Google it. And when you get to that website, it basically, in a very highly confidential way, allows you to register your information, at the very least to be contacted when there are new studies. So you can keep updated whenever there's a new study that's being performed in the BBDC, as well as immediately fill out some basic health information, which tells us, again, in a completely confidential way, about your basic state in terms of the type of OI you have and other basic information, which can be filled out very quickly. So I would encourage all OI families to enroll in the contact registry and to fill this basic information out. And again, it's completely confidential and protected. Now, why is this important? Well, because not only is it a way of informing you about studies that you may want to participate in, but it actually is a vehicle for you to participate in research directly. For example, two of the key pilot studies that go on in the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium, one focused on understanding adult OI women who have children, as well as potentially known pregnancies that are affected with OI, is in fact implemented through the contact registry. So individuals participate by filling out information by themselves as well as from their health providers on their pregnancy. So this is actual virtual research that's performed by the contact registry, and you don't actually have to travel to a site. Another example of this very powerful approach is, in fact, the quality of life tool study to try to develop, better measures of quality of life, so we can answer questions about whether interventions are working. Again, this study is implemented through the contact registry, and so anyone can participate throughout the world in this. And so again, it's a very powerful vehicle for all OI families, irrespective of where you live, to engage the Brittle Bone Disorders Consortium research program and to participate in the research. So again, I would encourage all individuals to participate in this highly protected and confidential forum.
Excellent. Thank you. That was a great overview of the contact registry. And as you said, people can access that by going to our website, oif.org, and that'll take you directly there as well. So adding sites to you talked a bit about the sites that are involved with the consortium. How important is it for us to continue adding sites, and how does that happen?
So, in the original funded grant by the National Institutes of Health, there were 8 primary sites that were supported, in addition to the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation as sort of our advocacy partner site. Now, we recognize that there's no way this will cover again and have proximity to all families with OI. And just like the contact registry is to try to reach everybody, one of the important goals of the consortium is to increase the number of sites that families can go to participate in research and also to access expertise in the care of OI. And this goes beyond just the borders. We want to engage sites and increase sites both in the U.S. as well as outside of the U.S. And this is critical because it increases the power of the scientific studies that we're doing. Because we do recognize that there may be geographic differences, cultural differences, national differences in how OI is treated and followed. And it's important to understand that so that we can really truly one day personalize therapy and medicine for individuals with OI. And so it's an absolute goal to expand the consortium. Now, any site that is interested in participating and following the rules and guidelines of the consortium can, in theory, participate. One of the important aspects, though, and this is where the OIF is again so important, is that we still have to raise monies and support for these new sites. As much as we would love that we can increase NIH funding, and we should all support the increase in NIH funding given the benefits of research on health, it's still limited. And so just on the funding we have, it's impossible to add more and more sites. And so one of the really amazing things that OIF has done has been work with individuals at new sites to raise money in different venues to help support these new sites. And in fact, this is how the new site at the University of Nebraska in Omaha was established. We expect new sites to come on from other places in the U.S. And in fact, we're talking about establishing our first international site in Germany. And so we hope to truly expand this into an international consortium with the help of our family and local fundraising advocates to support these new sites.
Excellent. So in the last few minutes that we have, can you talk a little bit about, I know you don't have a crystal ball and you can't see into the future, but as the consortium continues, what do you see sort of the goals ahead of us should be? What should they be for the consortium?
Absolutely.
Have you thought about,
I'm sorry?
Have you thought about that looking forward?
Absolutely. I mean, I wake up every day thinking about the future and planning for how and where we go as a group together. I think that we've made amazing strides, and I would say a big part of that is because of the organization and the drive of the OI Foundation in advancing education and science in our field. Having said that, we are far from understanding OI as a disease, as well as eventually getting a cure. I think that's always in our minds. But I think to be realistic, cures are something we want to go after, but they are often long in the distance because so much research has to go on, and that's what we're working towards. So I think the immediate deliverable over the next few years of the BBDC and the OIF efforts is, how to make OI and brittle bone diseases into a manageable chronic disease where we can readily improve quality of life. So that's the most important goal, I think, that we're all focused on. And that's why we're doing the studies that we're doing. I think there's no doubt the long-term future is, can we get to a cure? I think we will, but there's no way I can say when that will be. What I can say is that we will always be making progress to develop better understandings of the disease, what families and patients go through, what are targeted therapies and better therapies, and how the disease evolves, especially in adults with OI, because as we become better and better at treating with children with OI, they grow into productive adults, but then they are often affected with a whole new series of problems that we didn't appreciate. So again, I think that all our efforts in the next few years and beyond will be focused on everything on the diagnostic front, on understanding natural history, on targeted therapies to make the quality of life better for individuals with OI. I think a big part of that, which the OIF has done superbly, is to now also educate healthcare providers and families about this so that it's not just the expert centers, but what we want to do is make everybody expert and sensitive to this issue. And so that's another very important goal. But obviously, at the end of the day, hopefully before I finish my career, we'll get nearer and nearer, and if not, at a cure.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Dr. Lee, I can't thank you enough for all you do for us and for the OI community, for your passion and commitment. We're truly lucky to have you leading the consortium, and I want to thank you so much for talking with us today.
Absolutely. I want to wish you and all of our families happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much. You too. Okay.